Hello, everybody. Welcome to us keeping it interesting in 612 technology. My name is Caitlin Moronic. If you've not already added yourself to this Google Classroom and added this code, pause the video, add it, and then you can find this slideshow on its own assignment kind of within Google Classroom. Pause the video now if you need to do that, and then come right back. Okay, I'm guessing you're back now. So, first off, who am I? My name is Caitlin Morodic. I teach 8th grade science at Bartles Middle School in Portage, and I am going to be going into my 7th year of teaching. What we're looking at today is kind of what are some of those resources? Are you feeling stuck with resources you're using in class? Do you want some new ideas to help shake up the assignments you're using? We're going to be talking about kind of some tried and true resources and ideas to use to help keep learning interesting each day. We've got some resources from Kami to TeacherMade, quizzes, Edpuzzle, Nearpod, ways to use Google Slides in maybe some different ways, ways to use Google Docs and Google Forms maybe in some different ways as well. Success today, though, looks like you're leaving, and there's one thing you've learned that you can actually implement, like right now, today, when you go back to school. The very first resource I've got, now when I'm saying these are tried and true, they're tried and true by me, meaning I actually use these ones. So this very first one is Kami that I have, and I've kind of got them all set up in a similar way here to have this as an overview. At the top, I do have a link to get to Kami, so you will need to download the Kami extension if you don't already have it, and this will send you to the link I have here is to the Google Chrome store. You need to add it, and then your students are also going to need to add it to their Chromebooks. I believe the Portage District has already done that to students, at least as of last year. But if they don't have it, then have them add it. You can use this link that you've just clicked on so that you both can get to Kami and be able to edit that at the same time. Then once you get started, so what Kami is doing is you're making a PDF basically super easily interactive. With a free version, you can add text and shapes, highlight and draw. Many times you can find a code for a free trial, and with that links, or you can add links then, images, voice comments, videos, and more can be added. The basic version though will get the job done. It's really good for like, oh, I needed to send out copies and I didn't, or oh, nuts, I forgot to do whatever with this worksheet, because you basically are just taking and putting a PDF, which is something that it's more or less like a glorified poster of sorts at that point, and you're adding text on top. So it's nice, like it's a really easy way to digitize a paper assignment last minute, or there are some other types of assignments you can do. So what you would need to do is, if you're going to use this on Google Classroom, when you make an assignment, you'd want to make sure you send it out as an actual assignment. So it might look something like, and if you've got the Kami assignment and you found that pro version, you'll see this Kami assignment, and then it is slick to set up an assignment. If you just have the free version, you can still make this work. So I'm going to go example, Kami assignment. When you go to add it, you'll need to add something as a PDF. I do have a document, here it is, Soldier's Heart. So how to get this into a PDF. This one was already a PDF. If it's a Google Doc, you just go File, Print. You want to get to printing somehow. File, Print, or how I click the print there. And when you get here, instead of having it print to a specific copier, you're going to go to Save as PDF. And you might need to click Save More to have that happen. You'll click Save, and then you'll type it in. Now I've already added this one here. You can see it, so I'm not going to hit Save again, but you should. And now you've got this saved as a PDF. So if I go back to this assignment, I'm just going to add it as a file straight from my computer. You can do it from Google Classroom or straight from your drive. Sometimes it's a little finicky. So beware. Also, if you use the one on your Google Drive, sometimes it will link itself, which is really nice. But if you have the same one that you linked for the students, and it's the one that's existing in your Google Drive, and you add information to it, all that information is going to be saved on there. Like one time I made a helper video and put all the answers for half of an assignment. Those answers stayed on the assignment. So either when you're done kind of showing the example, delete them off, or if you save it as a PDF to your computer, then the file isn't as attached to each other. So I'm going to do that. Just it's kind of a little safeguard. When I open up my Finder, I can actually, so I could click browse and drag it in, or here's a little hack. Just open up Finder, click it, and drag it in. I know, it's wonderful. You're going to want to make it so each student gets their own copy for this assignment, and then go ahead and set this up how you'd like. Now, when students get this on their side, so they'll open it and it'll look something like this. They'll need to go open with, and they'll have this Kami here. When they open it with Kami, now they can go through and they can add text. Now, this is a sheet that we use at the very, very last few days of school, as we had a number of students in and out. But it was just kind of an outline, just something to kind of go along with. And you can see here, they can add like a text box. So if I add a text box here, so Charlie learns there is going to be a shooting war. If you didn't know, Children's Heart is about the Civil War. And then students can just add their comments as they go. Although he's only 15, he signs up to fight in the war. So you can just keep going. Then your students will need to click save. So it saves to their Google Drive. And then when they go to upload it to Classroom, it'll just be like how it should actually save straight to it at that point, because they're working on a copy that is their own. A little troubleshooting, sometimes you'll need to click into and open it so that you can see it on the Kami. Sometimes all the stuff doesn't save. So you may need to do that. There's just a few troubleshooting things. I do have kind of a helper link here of posting and getting some of those assignments. I also have, so here's kind of an interesting different type of a Kami assignment where you're getting students to use more than just the text box. And this is kind of a cool first day or first few days of school one to get them comfortable, because they, one, have to download Kami to do this assignment, two, have to interact with different parts or different features of Kami to do the assignment. So if you want to use something like this, go for it. So it says like using the drawing tool. Here, add the text box. So it says add your name. So Caitlin Moradic. Use the media tool to add a Google. Oops, actually, I want to go up here. This is where I was adding text box tool. So I added Caitlin Moradic. This I've been working on. I had to restart this video a few times. So this is where you want to make sure you delete these. So use the markup tool and click the highlighter, and then open the shapes tool, and then they can make these shapes. I don't know how the triangle. See, that look pretty good. Guess I want to touch the select tool again. I need to delete some of these. And a circle. We'll do the circle and then I'll stop there. You can kind of see how then that works out. That students can add. They need to click save and make sure that gets uploaded. So kind of my little things to note. Kami is super easy because basically you're just sending out a PDF. Is it able to self-grade though? Not at all. Can it integrate with Google Classroom? Yes, it works very nice, as you just saw. Just the Pro version is going to have the best integration with Google Classroom, because as I was showing you kind of making that sample assignment, and I'm just going to get rid of this draft, that it'll have that you can make it as a Kami assignment. But if you don't have the Pro version, you can't make the Kami assignment. The Pro version is $100 a year. I don't like to spend that amount of money on one resource when I have multiples I use. So if I can't find a code to get the Pro version, I would just use the regular assignment version and it'll work just fine. And then just troubleshooting, like I said, some students will attempt to do, well, I didn't say this one, but sometimes when you go to get to the assignment, like all the text doesn't go through. So you'll just have to click. There's a little letter K next to their name and their assignment. And then it'll open up in a separate window and everything should be there then. There is also a slight unintended problem that comes up is sometimes I have students, it's like, I would like you to please use the paper copy that I gave you. So please use that one. And they're like, I'll just do everything on Kami. And it's, if you're trying to get students to use handwriting skills and use a paper copy and they're like, I'll just use Kami, then it's a problem that you might need to address. It's kind of something that's teachable that you need to do. So just be aware of that sometimes students get like Kami happy. They're like, I'll just do it all on here. And I had some students, they're like, oh, since it's text, I can copy and paste from my friend. Could they do that on a paper assignment? Yes, but at least on a paper assignment, they have to write it out. To each their own, just be aware of it. The next one is TeacherMade. Now, with TeacherMade, if you like Google Forms but wish you could use the paper copy you already have done, you could use TeacherMade. Yes, TeacherMade can be self-grading. You can also make a blank assignment and add your own text or information for an easy formative assessment. That's quicker than a Google form. TeacherMade is also a decent-ish replacement or kind of a similar but different for Kami. So you can digitize a PDF assignment and have it self-grade potentially. You can digitize a paper quiz. Just know there's not a lock option currently. TeacherMade's a little more structured of a Kami, and it's a little more basic as well because it's a little newer, but they keep adding newer things, and it can do matching that will then grade itself. So is this one easy to use? It's easy to moderate because there's a few things that are a little buggy. So let's head over to it. So if you click on where it says TeacherMade's, that's actually the link to get here. And it'll ask you to sign in. You can sign in with Google, which I would. Now, to make an assignment, you just need to go create a worksheet. And I'm just going to go example here. You can add, if you want to change it to one of those folders, if you want to change it to one of those description pieces, and then you need to drag in a file. Yeah, I'm going to use that Soldier's Heart again. So I'm going to drag and drop that, and usually it takes a few seconds to do its thing here. So then once it's added, you can go and click Make My File. When you get here, it looks a bit like this. I'm going to move my little box here off to the side. So now you can be adding information to this. I usually start with some text boxes. So if you kind of hover over these, you can see what each thing is. So I'm going to go text box. And so I want them to write their name here. If I click on it, I can change the number of points or say do not score. I could add list correct answers if I want this to be like text validation. And then I can change, if there's different things here. I don't want this one to score, so I'm just going to click Save Changes. Now, the first answer, Charlie learns there's going to be, and it is an exact information. So I might actually make this say that there is 1 point and it is a shooting war. I can click to say answers must match the upper or lowercase. So if you had like, say, a map test or a map quiz or something and you want students to spell Wisconsin correctly with an uppercase, you'd want to check here. Honestly, for this one, shooting war, since it's the end of the sentence, it probably should be shooting war. And if you're like, you know what, I'm okay if they even just say war, you could add that. And as long as they type one of those, it's fine. If I want to change this upper and lower part or ignore the punctuation, I can click that. I'll click Save Changes here. I can also have some matching if I wanted. So I could make a matching area that then is going to add itself. It takes a little bit of time to get this one together, but you can add if you've got a matching section. There's true, false, so you can add true, false, and it's just kind of true or false. So like maybe if it says he is only 15, that is true or that is false, and then I can click to say which one I want to be true or false and edit it so I can add how many points are there. If I wanted to do multiple choice, if you've already got the choices there, like if you've already got like say a quiz or an assignment that has multiple choice, you can click how many choices you want and look at this. You can make it go up and down or side to side. It might not match up perfectly 100%, but let's say you've got 4 here in a row, like each of these lines say is one of them. I can edit the multiple choice here and how many choices, and I can click which one's going to be my correct answer. So if you've already got that quiz or test made, look at that. There's also check boxes and there's a drop down you can use. You can also enable it so students can add things as they go. You can add a link. And then once you're done, this does like auto save, but you can preview it to see like, hey, do I like how this ended up looking? So now as a student, I know I'd have to type in my name. I know I'd need to type in shooting war. I think I put true and I don't remember what we put there. Check my answers, and then it'll tell me what stuff I got right or what wrong. And this is what your students will see then too. So an example of one that looks a little bit nicer is here. I've got click here for an example. So on here, this is what your students would see, and then click begin with Google, yes, that's going to be me, that's going to, and this is all about how I set it up to be sent out. So I'll show you how to do this. So here I've got, so I did preview this earlier, but you can have, like students would put their name in, put their hour in. On that PDF, I had it ready to go. And if you see here, this was actually an assignment that we kind of had made up. And I went through and I added a few things so that this somewhat could self-grade. Why you might want to consider self-grading is if you have something that goes out, the more immediate of a grade students can get or see, the more likely they are to do it. Because if they do an assignment and it's going to take 2 weeks to get back to them, then it kind of makes them like, well, I don't even know it doesn't even matter to them anymore. But if they can look and they can see right away that, hey, I got this grade, it means more to them. Now, you might have some that you need to go back and hand grade, but even having like part of the assignment, having some self-grading is huge because it'll show them that grade. The only downfall is a lot of self-grading things don't really get to that high of level of Bloom's taxonomy. So not that you do this for every assignment, but it might be a consideration for some assignments. But here, like they need to type in the exact wording. And so once they are done, it'll self-grade. They can save it for later or click I'm done and then it gets turned in. So what does this look like on the teacher side? So to like send this out, when you go to my worksheets, let's say I want to send out this one that we just made, a soldier's heart. I click on it and then create an assignment. So I can change the assignment's name. How is this going to be delivered? I would select, you can just teacher made, unless you're going to try and go for the pro version. Honestly, it works just about the same either way. Pro version obviously is always going to be a little bit better, but the free version will do just fine. How will the student to sign in? I would always say use a Google account because then it links to their email and you'll just have the information just in case they miss putting it. Or if you missed putting a put your name here thing. So then go ahead, click next. How should the score be displayed? I usually like to go like the percent or points earned out of possible points and the score. What information does a student see? I usually like to put score on individual items. I don't like to show the correct answers because if they're going to go back and redo it or have a chance to fix it up, I don't want them to necessarily have the answers all right there, but I want them to be able to see like, oh, you got this one wrong. What information does the student see when work is returned? I would probably put score just on individual items. So then click next and choose tools and options that you want these students to have. So I would want them to create their own text boxes potentially because they might have extra information they need to add. Students can draw on the worksheet, and then all these other things are pro. You can leave them on or off. If don't have the pro version, they just won't have access to those anyways. But then you can go ahead and click save. So where it says can record audio and add to the worksheet, If you do have a student that's the best mode for them, you could possibly talk to the special education department and maybe they could purchase that pro license for you. I don't know if that's a true thing, but that might be more possible. When you click save, here is your assignment, and you can share it to Google Classroom. Notice it does not support syncing scores. If you go that pro version, then it'll sync the scores, but you can just copy this to the clipboard, copy this URL, and post it to Google Classroom as if it's a link. And now you've got an assignment. And then when you get it back, you can go through and the only ones I have right now have student names. So I'm not going to show you the report side, but there is a nice report side that tells you can return it to students. It's pretty intuitive. So you would go to, once you've got this is where you could see the assignments once you've made it. So heading in to a new one, quizzes. Quizzes, it is like a Quizlet, but it is one that will give you a grade or a summary report for each student's response. It plays a little bit more like a Kahoot or a Gimkit, and it can be completed live or assigned for students to complete on their own. So what is it good for? It's good for just review, like you might use a Quizlet. It's good as a formative assessment. Like if you've just learned content and you want them to just do a quick like review or show what they've learned, that'd be really good. There's a new feature where you can also add slides with it. I haven't gotten into that part. I've just used the quiz part of it. But it seems like it's a lot like Pear Deck if you've used that one. I haven't gotten much into Pear Deck, but Pear Deck kind of has like response validation within each slide, a little bit like Nearpod, which we'll get to. I do have Nearpod on here. Ease of use, it's medium. It's fairly okay to use. It's more in like the setting up the assignment. You just got to read and take your time. Can it self-grade? Yes. Although like literally every single thing, if it's a long response, it won't self-grade. But if it's a short response or text validation, it will self-grade. Does this integrate with Google Classroom? Yes, it even syncs with them. If a student retakes it, the new score will sync. Do know that sometimes the scores that there's sometimes ones that like just don't get synced perfectly, but they're still recorded. So you just have to add them. And regardless of how many points you put an assignment out of, so even if you put an assignment out of 5 points, it'll put the score your student earned out of 100. So it might be like 82 out of 5 or 100 out of 5. So you just need to go back and change that as it makes sense for you, unless you like to grade things out of 100 every time. So if I get rid of some of these other tabs that I've got open here and go to quizzes. So quizzes looks like this. And when you go to make one or create one, create or go to explore. If you've made some already, you can go to my library and there are ones within here. You're seeing there's a lot of people that have made them. It just depends if it was one of my fantastic co's who had made it at one point or another, or if it was me just who was able to work on that as it went. Let's say we're going to use Chapter 4 Colonial Roles here. You can start it as a live quiz and actually play it live with students or assign it as homework. I really like when I can assign it as homework because you could make this an assignment then. If you make an assignment, you would want to change the time length that each quiz is. So I guess when you go to the quiz or the lesson here, it'll walk you through and we'll just go science. So here's your multiple choice, and you can choose how long it is. If you're just going to make this into an assignment, I guess I got 2 of these going. If you just want to make this into an assignment, then I'd make it like 15 minutes per question. Not that they should take students nearly that long, but then it gives them enough time that they're not feeling pressured to answer it. So if I go back to one of these assignments, all right. So if I'm going back to one of these assignments, I can change what the deadline is. I can, if you go pro, you have more options. Note here with the deadline, do not put the date you actually want it done by, because then the quizzes will end on that day. So what I usually do is I put the custom deadline, like say our test is going to be on the 26th. I really want this to be done though by the 17th. I would put the 26th as my end date because that's the last day I'll take work for that unit. But then when I go to Google Classroom, I will fix up this assignment and change the deadline on Google Classroom, because the Google Classroom assignment date won't change, but the one on here will. It won't change it. If you change it on Google Classroom, it won't change it on Quizizz. But if you set it, you can't undo that. So just make your deadline nice and long here. You can assign it to your classes. So you can click on here. Say I want to go here first hour, and then this is where you can actually, there's a lot of stuff you can do on here. So I can put the title, I can put a description, I can pick when the game should start if I want it now or later, and then I can add those times as I need, which is really nice. So you can schedule it through Quizizz, and this is how you get it to sync to your Google Classroom. Oops. Just tuck him away. So then there's general settings. How many attempts can they have? I'd probably put unlimited. And if a student does this and they get a 26%, I either say, hey, I'm expecting that you get, I usually say at least an 80%. So I say, hey, give this another go. Or I say, in my head, they need a little more help. I should pull them in for an intervention, or, you're going to need to go from there. But I'd go unlimited. So you could have that redo option. I would have just validate only, so that students aren't getting all the correct answers, because I want them to learn, not just see the correct answers. Show the answers after the activity. I usually just want to show the questions so they can review that. And then there's other fun things, and you'd click assign. And off and away it goes. Then you can see the reports. It'll be under reports here, and you can see how your students did, which students did it, which students didn't, and it works out really nice. Troubleshooting, just that sometimes the scores don't sync, but they're always recorded. They just somehow don't make it to classroom all the time. It's usually 1 or 2 students is all, but note that. Also when they sync, it's just out of 100 points, regardless of how many points you have the assignment set up for. So another one, Kahoot. Now Kahoot is an assignment or type that has been around for years. We did a Kahoot, I think, when I was in high school, and I graduated in 2011. So not to say that's super long ago, but it's long ago enough. Oh, shoot. I wanted to show you what Quizizz looks like as an example. So here, I'm going to go back here before I go too far with Quizizz. So what it looks like on the student side is... looks a bit like this. And then they would click start. And... what is this used to mix with? It's a plus. And and then they've got little memes that are in between. So yeah, that's Quizizz. It looks a lot like a Kahoot or something, or Quizlet. But so in Kahoots have been going around for at least 10 years. Honestly, you probably already have Kahoots that are made. So when I go to log in, I've got it set up with surprise, surprise, Google. So just typing that in and heading in from here. So for Kahoot, honestly, you've probably used Kahoot a lot. You might even know and love Kahoot, but you can send out Kahoots as an assignment. And then you can see the scores from a live or scheduled assignment. So it's really good for an upcoming test. Obviously, you've probably done that a million times at this point. Kahoot is still one of those It's not an everyday one, but it's one that students do like to play. Super easy to make Kahoots. Can it self-grade? Yes, Kahoot only does self-grading. Does it integrate with Google Classroom? Yes, I mean, it just gives you a link like TeacherMade did. The scores don't sync though. And then just troubleshooting if they don't earn a high score. I give students, like I say, please give this another go. But they have to make an all new username. Or if they use a weird username that you don't know, you're not going to be able to know what it is because it doesn't like sync with Google that way. So just note that. So I'm going to continue for free here. And when I get here, if you need help with Kahoot, let me know. I think most people have played it enough times that it's pretty universal of how to make one. It's more the how to assign it. So when you get to your Kahoot and you go to hit play, instead of hitting teach, which is when you're going to have kind of one-on-one, you can click assign. And then you can put when this is going to happen, view the challenge information, and oops, don't know why that showed up like that. So assign. And then how many days, create a new one, because this one I've already got started. And then I can say what my date is. Again, like the TeacherMade, no, not on TeacherMade. Which ones have we been on today? The quizzes for sure. Make sure whatever date you put is past the day you actually want the assignment done. So let's say it's the assignment for the 18th, but your test isn't until the 28th. I'd probably put the 28th so that students can be playing it that entire time. Otherwise, if you put you want it done on this date, that's the last day that they can work on it. So choose the things you want, go ahead and click create. And then so there's the reports, and it even shows you the reports. Here's where you would see your players' information. You can see the summary of how the game has gone, like if there's any difficult questions or which students seem to need help. And here's the URL that you can copy and paste into Google Classroom. So then students can be playing it, and Kahoot is now an assignment, which is really nice. I like to do it like if students aren't in class, then I can still require them to play the Kahoot and review for that test outside of class. It's one that's become pretty nice. Edpuzzle. Edpuzzle is another different kind of new one. It's a video. Well, Edpuzzle's been around at least for 6-ish years, if not more. I've used it for about 6-ish years, maybe not my first year very much, but it's a video with questions. So you want to make sure your students are watching a video. You can use this to track their progress, and you can add questions to pop up that will guide learning. So you can make a video assignment interactive. You can chop up a video and take parts out if you'd like. You can add questions, open response, or even just notes. If it's all self-gradable, then you don't need to hand grade it. You can have open response ones on there though. Is it easy to use? It's not too difficult to use. Can it self-grade? Yes, as long as it's true, false, or multiple choice questions. Does it integrate with Google Classroom? Yes. Edpuzzle integrates flawlessly with Google Classroom. It is wonderful. So if you have an assignment out of 5 points, it will scale its score out of that. So that's really, really, really nice. If students don't finish the video in full, so honestly, usually want to put a question at the very end, like before the last few seconds. If they don't completely finish it and click turn in on Edpuzzle, then their score might not sync all the way, but you can easily go and get it. It's not good to watch as a whole class. It's an individual or small group thing only. Sometimes you can't find the video on YouTube, so then you can't use it because it has to be able to be on YouTube. Or if it's a video that you can download and then upload to you or to Edpuzzle, then it's possible. But if it's not on YouTube, it kind of makes it tricky. So not literally every video can be Edpuzzle, but a lot of them can. And you can reset student progress if needed. Like if they do it and it's really a low score, not great, you can reset it. So Edpuzzle, what one kind of looks like is this. This was one for how to prepare a model rocket for flight. So from this, once you get to Edpuzzle, you can edit the video. And when you edit it, this is where you can add, oops, this isn't quite where I want to be. I've already assigned this video at some point. If I go to content, then I just want to show you how one might look. We'll use this one. So if I want to add, I can go to edit, and then this is where I can cut videos down to size. You can add a voiceover if you want to talk about something, and then also questions. Something I sometimes do is if I can't find a video on YouTube, but I can find it on Edpuzzle, I will get it on Edpuzzle, and you can see I put a question at the very end. So now the video has no questions, but I can show it to my class. What? I know it's kind of working the system, but it works out. Here's also wherever you want this video to stop, so you can click play.
Interested in field biology.
You can play it and pause it. So like, oh, I wanted to add a question. She said something very interesting here. I can click on add a multiple choice question, type it in, type in my answer choices, select which one's right. I can add extras if I want, and then I'm done. I don't want to do that though, because I might actually want to use that video for a class. How I would go about adding this to assigning this. So when I click on it, I go to assign instead here. I can click which classes I want. You might need to add a new class at times. Put your start date, put your due date. Again, with the due date, and this would be true with quizzes and all of these, if you have it like pre-sending out to Google Classroom, once you're done, you're going to want to go to Google Classroom and then edit that assignment so that you put a new due date on it. You might want to add different content to it. You might want to change the name of it. So once you're done with adding any of these, you probably want to go to Classroom to just finish it up. But you can set it up so that it schedules out later, which is kind of nice. And then put your due date later. So again, if I want this assignment to be done like say the 16th at 3:30, I would actually say, because my test say is on the 25th, I would put the 25th so that students can work on it until then. I don't want to enable students to do assignments late, but I also know the reality of life is some students aren't going to do the assignment the day of. Some people are going to be absent, etc. I usually like to turn on the closed captions, and if you've assigned this to, or if you've added a class, you can have it post straight to Google Classroom and assign. Super simple. Edpuzzle's one of my favorites. Although be careful with any of these. It doesn't matter if it's an Edpuzzle, doesn't matter if it's a Nearpod or whichever. Be careful not to do the same assignment over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, because then you'll do it to its death and students will hate it. So on to another one. Nearpod. Nearpod, our typical slides just got majorly upgraded. You can add open response, you can add links to websites, you can add videos with questions, short games, matching, fill in the blanks, 3D field trips, already created slides, and more. What is it good for? It's good for frequent formative assessment. So as you're going through the assignment, you can have these assessment pieces in there, one after another after another. It also helps to reinforce learning as students go. It's great as a whole class or individually. Ease of use, it's medium. It takes a bit of time to figure out the parts and how to get the slides to work. The slide formats are very basic, and any slides imported will just kind of be a background slide. They're not editable. Can it self-grade though? Yes, each part self-grades, or it'll compile all the answers together. But you'll need to go through all the pieces to see that in the report. Does it integrate with Google Classroom? It'll be a lot like TeacherMade, where you just get a URL that you can put on an assignment. The grades don't sync because there's multiple grades within each one. And troubleshooting, just Nearpod, it's not super easily gradable, like, oh, I want to change this in the slide. It doesn't do that very easy. It's kind of, once it's done, it's what you go with, and you can make a new version for the next year. When new features come out, they add them often, but then sometimes they're a little glitchy for a little while. You may consider sending this out and choosing the box to make sure students complete this as they go. Be careful again just to not overuse this resource. So Nearpod looks like this, and I believe in Portage we do have access to using Nearpod. If not, talk to our tech department, or there's sometimes even you can get a what am I trying to say? Like a trial version, or you can use the free version. The free version just isn't going to give you access to all the pre-made lesson plans already. But if you're like, wow, I think I'm really going to be using this often, you might want to talk to our tech department. So I logged in with Google, and I can just make my own. And so if I make my own, I can go lesson, create content, media activity, video, Google Slides, and then it's going to depend on which one you have. If you need help with all the like bits and pieces, I'm happy to help. To dive into it right now would probably be like a good half hour to an hour session just on Nearpod. But once you've got it made, you'll have access to these. So here's a preview of one that we've got. So this one was, where is Starman? Takes a second to load. So preview, there are, so it's like essential question, kind of the objectives, let's get it started. And this was one that was partially pre-made, and then I went in and edited it for what I wanted to add or change. So then like here's already a question, kind of like a poll to start. This is like a little cork board. Students can put their ideas, dive into learning, kind of some key vocab. So then there's some of that vocab there. There's another, here's like a quick little assessment to see how well they kind of got that information. Kind of the new information, this takes them to a web page then. The next one, kind of a class discussion where they can add some of their own ideas and an open-ended question. So you kind of get the idea here. You can also add some videos with questions as you go. And it's nice. It's a very structured, guided learning. Just, again, don't overuse it. Also be careful of how long it gets to be. 30 slides is honestly getting pretty long, but a lot of those, if you kind of saw, were just like short and informational. Like you're not necessarily learning informational, it's just kind of stuff to start and there's stuff at the end. If you have a Nearpod that's like 100 slides long, it's going to take your students more than 2 hours to work on. So you need to realize, do I want them to learn, or do I want to take all of their time and they will hate this resource? A lot of students, Nearpod's really good if it's well done, but if you overuse it, or you're like, oh, it's an at-home learning day, or they're going to do this on their own, so you want to cram everything you can in there, you might be giving your students a 3-hour assignment. So you really need to be careful about that, because I don't think you would intentionally want your students to have that much time dedicated to a single assignment. Maybe there's something I don't know, but that usually makes students hate Nearpod when they get those types of assignments. Screencastify. I'm using it right now. Make a video of you working on your computer. You can pair it with a doc cam or on your, if you have a smart TV or smart board, to show other things like you might be doing for a lab experiment. You can pair it with an interactive whiteboard. Reminder, if it's on your screen, it's going to be screencasted. So everything I've done today, because it's on my screen, is going to be part of this video. What it's good for: make and explain directions for an assignment. Then you don't need to repeat yourself. And if you give good directions, you can use that video for a few years over and over again. I know, right there, just right there. You might just be like, yes. If I have an assignment or a project that we have that we're doing, I've made an assignment video that goes with it. So for the students who aren't there, there's a video. For those who didn't pay attention, there's a video. For those who just want another review of going over it, there it is. So if a student comes up to me and they're like, I don't understand this, yes, let me be clear. I will help that student, and I want to. But I'll say, did you watch the video first? Not because I'm trying to be lazy, not because I don't want to help them, but because I want them to be able to help themselves. I want them to get those skills where they're like, I should do everything I can first before I am like trying to get my teacher to spoon feed me every little detail. So I make that and then they can go back to it over and over again. If I've got a project, I'll use a DotCam and I'll put copies of like past assignments, even if as needed, as examples. So then students can see that again. So here's an example video. I know this is very like, or this is actually getting to the Screencastify, so you need to add this as an extension. If you see up here, there's my little picture, a little puzzle piece, split tab resize. You totally want that. Just saying, you can split your screens, which is nice. These are some of my favorite extensions, but it's this one, Screencastify Video Screen Recorder. And then what an example looks like. So this is like our Roanoke flipbook we do. And there's kind of specific pieces that we need them to do. Hello, everyone. Today we are going to be talking about the Roanoke flipbook. So if I make this smaller, you can see like I've got, this is what it looks like. And then I've got here is actually the assignment. Here's the questions, the assignment that helped to set this project up. Here's the rubric. Here's the flip book. Here's what we expect on each piece. Here are some examples, and I showed some like, here's some really good examples, and like, here's a less great example. I know I have it in here. I don't know if I'm gonna click on it as we go. But now if students have a question about their flip book as they go, they now have a resource to refer to. And if you look, this is an assignment. Does it actually take 11 minutes to explain? No, but I can go through and I can get all the information. I can add the extra questions that come up in class typically. I can answer some of the little parts that people get hung up a little bit on here, and everything is there for students to refer back to as they need. Screencastify, like, it's great. It's literally my favorite. It's easy to use. It's a tool. It's not something that's necessarily grading. They do have a feature called Screencastify Submit that they've launched recently. I haven't used it much. I think it's going to look a little bit like a Flipgrid. This will, though, as soon as you're done, directly upload to your Drive and YouTube if you'd like. Now, in Portage, the district paid for us to have Screencastify. It is wonderful. If you are in a district that doesn't have Screencastify, I think it's 5 minutes is how long each of your videos can be, which honestly isn't the end of the world, because you could split it into like, here's part 1, part 2, part 3 of an assignment, and just have 3 videos and you have 15 minutes of talking. Before, our district had Screencastify, so we could have unlimited lengths of videos. That's what I would do. Just troubleshooting, make sure you've enabled screen sharing in your settings on your MacBook. So you'd go to their like little settings guy here, and then screen recording, privacy, and then screen recording to make sure you've got that. So if I go into my settings, security and privacy, and then I need to go down to screen recording, make sure you say Google Chrome can screen record here. And then when it asks you to enable your audio and camera, make sure you say yes. Our next ones, Google Slides, some docs, some sheets, some forms. These are just some ideas that you might consider using as we go. So Slides, you can make this into a graphic organizer. I have kind of gotten away from using Google Docs as in like the written, the one like, you know, like the one that's kind of like Microsoft Word. I've gotten a little bit away from that, because if you make it on Slides, you can format it exactly how you want. So now my syllabus looks a little bit more like a graphic organizer. They do have columns, I think, now on Google Docs, but if I want to add charts easily, if I want to add pictures easily, I want to kind of mix the media, I make a Google slideshow. And then instead of leaving it as a slide with, oops, why do I have a bunch of these here? Let me get them out of the way. Meh. Okay. So I go File and Page Setup, and then I go Custom, and then 8.5 by 11 inches. Now my Google Slide is literally a piece of paper. And when I go to print this, it'll print out like a piece of paper. Google Slides, if you do it like this, it pretty much makes Google Drawings obsolete because now you have a multiple page Google Drawing. It almost can make a Google Doc obsolete because you can format it how you want. The advantage on Google Docs is if you're typing a paper, then it just nicely goes on to the next page where Google Slides wouldn't. But it's so nice if you're trying to set up an activity that needs like specifically made bits, because then you just make a text box. Like these are all just different little text boxes. I wanted to add it's wonderful. So you might consider doing that with your Google Slides. Something else that's kind of fun is I made this into like we had an All About You lab coat, and then students had to add things to it. Now, to make this easier, so if we were to just add the lab coat and tell students to add things to it, it might make it kind of difficult because, like, see if I move this text box, now it's not where I want it, which is kind of a problem. But if you so I added this lab coat picture, and then I saved this as an image, and my background here, I chose an image. The image was a piece of paper that was this size with this. So now look at this. That lab coat doesn't move. So remember on Kami how I said you could add text on top of it? You can do the same thing here on Google Slides as well. Remember on TeacherMade where I was like, you could just add text and then like in different spots? Here, students can add things. So if Kami isn't working for you, Google Slides is your favorite now. Another one is if you've got pieces for students to move about. So we have like a theory, like what is a theory, what goes into making a theory. So this will make you a copy, maybe. Oh, it's making a copy. Oh boy, I think I'm gonna have like 5 copies because I just clicked a bunch of times. But I wanted students to have their own copy of this, so I sent it out. And then what they did is we're making a theory box. And what this really is if you go down to slides 6 and 8, I think it is, normally I have this as a paper copy, but with COVID, I didn't want to hand out paper pieces or have students cut it out because then they would see the box that this should make. And we're talking about like, what is a theory, and a theory, all the pieces need to fit. And if you have a new piece of evidence, you have to see how it fits. Like science adapts to that. So like, here's our first box. And then, oh, there's a new piece of evidence. And now we need to make our next box. So now students can move these around and get these to fit. If they do move them too much, they are going to change them, but I've just got a little note there. So see, I can start to make these pieces fit together. And then they can be making their box. Oops. But if they like accidentally click something wrong, I have just got up here, you can click Control Z and they'll go back as needed. So just kind of an interesting idea if you need something tangram or tangible or moving and you don't have the paper copies or you don't want to have paper copies. Google Docs, did you know you can translate a document? It's not perfect, but it's possible. I'm actually going to go to this HyperDoc because I should be able to just use that. So HyperDocs are just kind of like a format or a form that you then can have like links embedded in. It's kind of like taking your Google form, but making it a little more simplistic. So here's kind of videos to watch. Here's some things to practice. Add your answers as you learn, and then test it. So we had a quizzes linked here. Now, how you do that translating. So it's nice. The hyperlink or HyperDoc just means it has links going to other things. But if you go to Tools and Translate Document, you can choose the language that you want it translated to. I'm looking for Spanish. There it is. Now, I would not use this as your first go-to, like, oh, I didn't get this assignment to our or the person who can translate this better. But in a pinch, it at least gets it close. So do know that you have access to that if you didn't already. Some other thoughts or ideas is in Google Sheets and Forms. That is self-grading heaven. If you have a video that won't quite work in Edpuzzle, or if you have multiple videos for one assignment, put it in a Google form and then just have it self-grade. So this is one that we have of Sir Isaac Newton. Like if you've got like say 4 or 5 videos that you want students to watch, but you're like, if I put 5 up there, they're not going to watch all of them. Just put it into a Google form. So here's the video and here's questions that go with it. Here's the second video. We did it like as part 2 and the questions that go with it. We have it, so it's going to self-grade. And voila, we have a self-grading kind of sort of Edpuzzle. Some other things, you can have your Google, you can have, if you want to look at a document super quick in Google, in your Drive. So I know I've got some that have my student scores, but I don't know that I want to show those because it has student names. But let's say I need to see quickly this translated copy of. If you make your Google form into, like export it as a spreadsheet, that spreadsheet will show up in your Drive. And when you open up that spreadsheet, something you could do is you don't need to open it up all the way to see the score. So you could go, actually, I think I might even have one that I have kind of tucked away. Okay, so let's say this is my data sheet for that assignment. If I just click, so I've selected it, as you can see it's blue, and then I click the letter P, I can see the answers. And if it is self-grading, do you see this? So like if I go all the way to the bottom, it looks like Caitlin number 72 got a 37 out of 52. I didn't have to open up the Google form. I didn't have to wait for the Excel sheet to load, and I have the grade. Woot, woot. It's such a little thing, but it's so worth it. So worth it. You could also use Google Forms to kind of get guide students through a passage as they're reading. Something that's kind of fun is this is a it is a choose your own adventure form. Now you're going to have access to this. It took me probably 13 hours to make. No, I'm not kidding. But we made this during COVID because we couldn't do the activity as a group in class with students sitting so close to each other. So I made the activity we had into a choose your own adventure. What you need to do though is as you're going, you have to format each piece so they're going to different places. So as students are clicking, when you click where it's going to, this option needs to skip to, say, section 1, or skip to section 3, skip to section 4. This is a really, really big document, so it takes a long time to load, but it's pretty cool once it's all done. And now I can use it year over year over year over year, and students can kind of go through this choose your own adventure as they go. You just have to take note of where you're telling them. So see where it says continue to next section. As I have it, that's how I had to set up the multiple choice question. You can have that added as a piece. So if you have an activity that might be worth doing that, that's kind of what it might look like. And then the last kind of one I wanted to mention is there's a new-ish thing in the fun bits of learning sphere. I can't take credit for finding this. I was introduced to this by Joanne Owens, but it makes a picture as you have the correct answers. Now, I've got kind of a note on here that as students type in the correct answers, a mystery picture will appear. I would join groups on Facebook, and you can get ones that are already made and free. You can buy them off of places like Teachers Pay Teachers. Note, if you find one, you can dig into the settings and restructure it for your own needs. I've figured out how to do that. Each one's a little bit different, so it's not like, here, this is how you do it, because these are all homemade by teachers. Now, when I said that Choose Your Own Adventure took me 11 hours to make, these magic reveals usually are taking people like 4 to 5 hours to make. So, and you can find them for free. Worth it. If you need to buy it off Teacher Pay Teacher, honestly, it's still pretty worth it, because like they've put a lot of time and effort into these. A lot of times it's the conditional formatting is what's being played with. But what this looks like is, so here's like the questions and a pH below 7. So it says use an A for acid, B for base, and N for neutral. So an acid, a base, this is a base. Cabbage juice turns green is a base. And you can see a picture starts to appear. How cool is that? And then it's going to make a picture really easy to grade on Google Classroom, because when students add their work, you can see the little picture in that little thumbnail of the assignment. It's super easy for grading, which is nice. Now, is this getting up to the highest levels of Bloom's? No. Is this getting to a review of content? Or a lot of the magic reveals are math practice or math review. So like working with like exponents, like what number does this equal, or PEMDAS, or, like a lot of them are made for math, not necessarily science, but there are ones that exist. And sometimes you can make it as a nice review. Like for this, what is the pH like? What are the characteristics of these? It makes sense. It makes sense to use it for this. Some of these resources I've told you today can get to the higher levels of Bloom's. If it's a higher level of Bloom's, it's probably not going to be something that can self-grade, but it's probably a little more worth it. Like the lab coat, that's not going to be self-grading, but it's going to be more of something that's going to take students some time, and it's a good get to know you project. If you're having, the free response, or you're mixing up free response with some multiple choice, you'll get kind of a few different levels of Bloom. So you're going to need to adapt it to your content, how it best makes sense for you. You're going to need to adapt it to learning for your students, how it best makes sense. But those are some of my favorite tried and true resources that I have, and they're just ways that you can kind of make learning interesting and different. Something to note, and this is from a conference I went to, and it was all about like digital literacy. And the biggest thing that has stuck with me from it is the speaker. I went to one of the sessions, and after realizing it was for college professors, somehow I ended up going. It was paid for, it was free. You always learn something. Yeah, it was an interesting one. But the biggest thing he said is, don't make something digital just to make it digital. If it's better to be paper, then let it be paper. If you're like, oh, I'm going to make all my assignments a Kami because then I'm using technology. No, you're not really, because you're just replacing paper with doing the exact same thing, but they're typing it instead of writing it on paper. Sometimes the paper option is the best option, and that's fine. Like, it's okay. Don't go digital just for the sake of digital. Use what's best for learning. Sometimes it is nice to shake it up and have some things go digital to just shake it up a little bit. But know that sometimes the best method can be the simple method. You want your students to learn at the end of the day. Make sure the best learning happens every day. If you have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, have a great day, guys.